Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I will make a statement about the murder of Henry Nowak. Last December, Henry, aged just 18, was a first-year university student with his life ahead of him. He was kind, hard-working, loved by his family and friends. His murder at the hands of Vickrum Digwa was a horrifying act. Digwa murdered Henry and then lied about him as he lay dying, falsely accusing him of racism. It was an evil act. I know the thoughts of the whole House will now be with Henry's family and his friends, just as mine are. What they have been through is heartbreaking, for most of us, unimaginable. I know nothing can take their pain and loss away. But yesterday, we saw some measure of justice. Digwa was sentenced to life imprisonment. He will serve a minimum term of 21 years. His mother, Kiran Kaur, has been convicted of assisting an offender. She is due to be sentenced on 17th of July. And today, the Crown Prosecution Service has authorised further charges against other members of the attacker's family. With further sentencing and possible charges pending, we must be cautious still in what we say about this case, so that we do not place any proceedings at risk. However, I can and must pay tribute today to the dignified and powerful words of the Nowak family in the statement they gave after yesterday's sentencing. They deserve answers. They deserve answers in particular about what happened on that awful night and the actions of the police officers who arrived on the scene. I expect many in this House and many more across this country have now seen the police officers' body cam footage released last night. It is, without question, a disturbing and tragic thing to see. People are rightly asking questions about how the situation was handled, and they are shocked and disquieted to hear Henry's words, "I can't breathe." I know that it is difficult to wait any longer for answers, but there is a proper process to assess whether there have been incidents of police misconduct, led by the Independent Office for Police Conduct, the IOPC. They will determine what could and should have been done differently. They will determine what action may need to be taken against individual officers. The family yesterday called on me, and I quote, to ensure the IOPC has the resources, authority and independence it needs to conduct a full, fearless and transparent investigation. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm to you today that I will do so. The IOPC will be equipped and encouraged to act to find the truth and to ensure, if necessary, that there are consequences. There have been accusations, I know, of two-tier policing, that one community has been prioritised over another. It will be for the IOPC to determine the facts with regard to this specific case, and I cannot and will not comment on them. But let me say this on the question of preferential treatment more widely. The police in this country have a sacred duty to police without fear or favour. Everyone in this country is equal before the law. It is the promise upon which our whole justice system rests, and the equality of every citizen is the foundation on which the openness, tolerance and generosity of this country rests. Let me also be clear about one other thing, a dangerous undercurrent that I have seen in the reaction to this awful crime. Threats against police officers are utterly unacceptable. There can be no justification for intimidation, abuse, or attempts to take the law into one's own hands. A police officer unrelated to this case has been misidentified online and subjected to death threats. He has been forced to relocate to protect himself and his family. Misinformation and inflammatory commentary is making a dreadful situation even worse. We must all, together, condemn it. And we must also allow the facts to be established to the appropriate investigations and the courts, and we must do so calmly and responsibly. The Nowak family and Henry's memory deserve answers. They have also called on us all to take action. Action to address the daily tragedy of knife crime in this country. This government is committed to halving knife crime in this decade. And since the start of this Parliament, we have made progress. Knife crime has fallen by 10%, and knife homicides are down 27% at their lowest level in a decade. But clearly, we must do more, whilst there are still tragedies like this one. And for that reason, we have recently published our Halving Knife Crime Plan. It sets out how we will go further to drive sustained reductions in violence. It brings together action across government and across society to stop people from turning to knife crime and to ensure that perpetrators are caught and brought to justice. Amongst a range of measures, this will see schools and families supported to address the root causes of knife crime through the establishment of 50 Young Futures hubs. Police using new crime mapping tools to target enforcement more precisely and making better use of stop and search. And cruel and exploitative drug gangs stopped from criminally exploiting children, preventing the knife violence that is driven by the county lines trade. In relation to knife controls, there have been calls to limit the right of Sikhs to carry their ceremonial knife, the kirpan, one of the 5 holy items in their faith. The Offensive Weapons Act of 2019, passed under the previous government, clarified and strengthened existing legal protections in relation to long kirpans. This included extending defences so that kirpans can be lawfully possessed for religious reasons and used in religious and ceremonial contexts. But let me be clear, carrying a knife for the purpose of religious observance is one thing. Using it, as so tragically occurred in this case, is quite another. It is a vile act, a crime of the utmost severity, and it will be met with the severest punishment. Yesterday, the Nowak family ended their statement with a powerful call to us all. I quote, "We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred, or tension." They quoted the words of the prosecuting lawyer, and I quote again, Mr. Speaker, "This is not a case about Sikhism. This is not a case about racism. This is a case about murder." I echo those words. We cannot allow this murder to turn communities against one another. We must condemn those who seek personal political profit from tragedy. Instead, we must show who we really are in this country. This was a murder, a vile and violent crime. The punishment must be reserved for those who are responsible for the act. We do not believe in collective punishment in this country. Instead, we stand together against an act of pure evil. We condemn those who committed this heinous crime, not all those who share their faith or their ethnicity. Yesterday, a sentence was handed down in court. I know it will never be enough. The loss felt by Henry Nowak's family and friends will last forever. A wonderful young man will never enjoy the promise of the life that stretched out before him. The evil acts of his murderer and accomplice will never be undone. But we can choose to use this moment to pursue positive change. We are still limited in what we can say. There is a sentence to be handed down and further charges may follow, and there is an IOPC investigation ongoing. But I call on everyone here to be responsible in this moment to allow justice to run its full course. But while we must be limited in what we can say, we must not be limited in how we act. I will end with the words of the Nowak family once more. Last night, they wrote that no other family should experience the heartbreak and horror of losing a child to knife crime. Let that be the challenge to us all, across this House, across government, and across society. It is the very least we can do to honour the memory of Henry Nowak. Mr. Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Chris Wilkes, Shadow Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Home Secretary and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for ensuring the government came to the House today. The murder of Henry Nowak is devastating for his family. He was an innocent young man on the way home when he was brutally killed. Henry's family have suffered an unimaginable loss, and I know the thoughts of the whole House will be with them all. The evil murderer, Vickrum Digwa, lied from start to finish, including a false allegation of racism. But on arriving at the scene, the police appeared more concerned with the accusation of racism and even the possibility that Digwa himself was injured than they were in helping Henry. Henry told the police he could not breathe 9 times. He told them he had been stabbed 4 times. The response from the officer, we've all heard, was to say, "I don't think you have, mate." Henry was handcuffed and dragged across the ground as he lay dying. Can you imagine what he must have felt as he cried out for help and was ignored, as the officers who should have worked to save him instead handcuffed him and inquired after the welfare of his killer, standing just inches away? Henry's dad, Mark, said this: "Henry did not die with dignity. He did not die with the care he deserved. He lost consciousness before anyone believed him." So we need the IOPC to urgently and transparently report into how it was the police attending were more concerned with the accusation of racism than they were in helping a dying man. Mr. Speaker, we cannot tolerate a situation where false allegations of racism by criminals are believed. We cannot allow the colour of someone's skin to be a consideration in how the police or other public services treat people. And yet this has happened. Just recently, we learnt that Valdo Calicone, who murdered 3 people in Nottingham, was not sectioned by mental health professionals because they thought there was, and I quote, "an over-representation of young black males in mental health detention." The consequent failure to section Valdo Calicone, in part because he was black, led directly to the murder of 3 innocent people. The head teacher of Axel Radicubana was accused of racist stereotyping when she described Radicubana as a threat to safety, and the risk assessment was watered down. Radicubana, of course, went on to stab and murder 3 young girls at a Southport dance class. But, Mr. Speaker, this has not happened by accident. It is enshrined in the police's own policy documents. The police anti-racism commitment, published in March 2025 by the NPCC and the College of Policing, urges police forces to reverse engineer the same arrest rates between ethnic groups, even though the offending rates are different, by treating different ethnic groups differently. Let that sink in for a moment. An official police document actually says people should be treated differently based on the colour of their skin. I've said before at this dispatch box at least twice that document should be withdrawn. The dangerous ideology of so-called anti-racism, allowing people to be treated differently based on race, must end. Extreme activists have hijacked the policy-making process, and this is where it has led. It has no place in policing, it has no place anywhere. So does the Home Secretary agree that the so-called police anti-racism commitment must urgently be withdrawn? It is morally wrong, and it is dangerous as well. Police forces must focus on catching criminals and keeping the public safe. They must simply treat everyone exactly the same. I want to finish with Mark Nowak's words yesterday, Henry's father. He said this: "Henry was 18. He was kind, ambitious, loved, and full of promise. He had his whole life ahead of him. But that future was stolen from him, and no verdict and no sentence will ever give it back." Mr. Speaker, it is true that nothing can bring Henry back. But let us make sure that no one ever again experiences what Henry did in his last tragic moments.
Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me thank the Shadow Home Secretary for his remarks and for the tone in which he's reflected on this horrific murder and the words of the family, which obviously he knows I share as well. Let me just say his initial point, I would normally let it slide, Mr. Speaker, but I think there's far too much misinformation floating around social media for me to just leave this one unchallenged. On the government coming to the House, he will know that the proceedings and sentencing concluded at 4 o'clock yesterday. We said we would come immediately thereafter to the House, and we have presented ourselves here today. We have responded in an appropriate way with all of the facts at our disposal and all of the judges' remarks at our disposal for our review before coming to this House. And I think it's important that we respond in these moments in a measured way, and that is what we, the government, have sought to do. He referred to evidence in relation to the Valdo Calicane inquiry. He will know that the inquiry into the Nottingham attacks is well underway, and I don't think it would be appropriate for me from this dispatch box to preempt any findings that the inquiry might make. But of course, all of the actions and assumptions made by professionals of different public services, including the police and the health service, are subject to scrutiny within that inquiry. I'm sure those are matters that we will return to as that inquiry reports. He did refer to the findings of phase 1 of the Southport inquiry in relation to those horrific murders and the findings in relation to how the public service systems in that case, in relation to Axel Rudab-Cabana, centred the danger he might have posed to himself given his mental health diagnosis and did not take into account the danger he posed potentially to others. There have been recommendations, he will know, that have been made for change in this area, which the government will respond to fully in due course. But let me be very clear with him and all members in this House, in all such matters, in terms of how we engage with our public services and how they assist risk, the only important factor is the risk an individual poses, not their race, not their religion, or indeed anything else. And we will not tolerate a situation where other irrelevant factors are taken into account. I repeat again, all are equal before the law, and every public service needs to bear that in mind. He referred to the police anti-racism commitment. He will obviously remember, I'm sure, that the race action plan for the police began life under the previous Conservative government. In fact, I'm old enough to remember when Theresa May called out disproportionate use of stop and search for black communities in particular. He will know that the way that policing works in this country is by consent. It is important that the police retain the confidence of all of the communities that they police, and that there has, I think he would acknowledge, been a history and a context here relating to racism and the police. Whatever changes are made, it is important that nobody overcorrects or course corrects such that all of us as citizens are no longer equal before the law. And this government will always ensure that in fulfilling their sacred duties to keep our communities safe, that the police always act without fear and favour and always ensure that every citizen is treated equally. But I'm sure he wouldn't want to do down or ignore historic and legitimate concerns that there have been from some communities about institutional racism as well as differential treatment. I condemn all types of differential and every type of differential treatment. I do not stand for it. My own track record as a government minister shows I will always act when there is evidence of differential treatment, and it is absolutely vital that that message is heard loud and clear across the whole of our country.
Baron Paffy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary of State for her statement. Henry was a popular and much-loved student at the University of Southampton, and his murder has horrified our city. I know both my honourable friend, the member for Southampton Test, and I want to commend everyone at the university for their response and support for the university community following this tragedy. Mr. Speaker, like many, I've watched the body cam footage, and it is both heartbreaking and infuriating. It makes it plain for all to see how Henry posed no threat that would warrant being handcuffed, and yet was treated as a criminal based on the lies of his murderer. Now, no one in their right mind thinks that one Sikh or one or two police officers represents all Sikhs or the entire police force. As Henry's father has said, this is about murder, about our response to it, and about our prevention of it. So I have two questions for my right honourable friend. We have a knife problem in this country. That's why we've taken early steps to ban zombie knives and to crack down on knife sellers, but it is obvious that is not enough and we have to go further. So will the Secretary of State commit to clarifying a set of tough and consistent knife laws and the resources to enforce them so that we can actually move on? And secondly, I echo the words of Henry's dad, as she did, and ask the Secretary of State to guarantee that the IOPC will have the resources, the authority and the independence it needs to conduct a full, fearless and transparent investigation. Will she guarantee that? Because the catastrophic errors that were made when police officers got to Henry must never happen again.
Well, let me thank my honourable friend for his contribution and for his questions. Let me give him that guarantee. The IOPC will and do have the resources that they need in order to conduct their investigation, and I know that they will do so, with the full independence that is afforded to them in our system. I understand that they intend to report finally within the next 3 months, and I do believe that a meeting is now taking place with the family. Some contact had been made before, but they were waiting for the end of the criminal trial. So, of course, they will do their job. They are getting on with doing their job, and I expect them to report as quickly as possible. But I can give him the guarantee that he seeks. He is right about us having a knife crime problem in this country. That is why the government has a landmark commitment to halving knife crime over a decade. It's why we've launched the Knife Crime Action Plan. And let me reassure him, it does have the resources it needs in order to fulfil its historic mission.
Max Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a heartbreaking case of a young man who should be alive today with a happy life ahead of him. Because of the forces of evil, he is not. On behalf of my party, I want to extend my sympathies to Henry's family and friends, and I welcome the Home Secretary's statement today. The independent investigation should uncover how one evil individual was not picked up, despite apparently exhibiting disturbing behaviours that saw him ejected from his place of worship and having an obsession with weapons. Police officers, of course, we know, work under high stress and must make split-second decisions. We rely on their good judgment every day. Tragically, in this case, the officers made a clear and terrible mistake, one that failed Henry and has broken the hearts of his family. The investigation must ensure recommendations are made so nothing like this can happen again. But as the Home Secretary said, there must be no doubt, though, that the police officers that we see on our streets must be treated with respect. Before going any further, we must also acknowledge that Digwa betrayed his faith and he betrayed his community, and he deserves his punishment. Regardless of that, it is incumbent upon all of us in this House, when we discuss this issue, to bear in mind the words of Henry's father, Mark, who said, "We do not want Henry's murder to be used to create further hatred, division or tension." Since the sentencing and the release of the harrowing video showing the sickening incident, the vast majority of politicians have responded to this matter with due sensitivity, and that reflects well on this House. It is therefore all the more disturbing that we have seen the Honourable Member for Clacton once again using tragedy to divide British communities. We all know why he does this. He's made a career out of this and has become rich as a result. But we are also well aware, as he is, that his actions are divisive, dangerous and fundamentally un-British. The rights of British people to observe their faith are hard won. They cannot be contingent upon the colour of any individual's skin. Those rights, we know, come with a responsibility that Digwa has betrayed, and he must now serve his well-deserved punishment. Of course, as other members have said, we are too aware of the tragedies of knife crime and the problem it represents in this country. That must be tackled, as Mark Nowak has rightly said. The judge's remarks in this case tell us the knife being carried by the murderer was different to that typically carried by British Sikhs as a part of their faith.
Mr Wilkinson, it's no use holding your hand up as though you're some policeman. I'm policing it on the time given. You're quite a bit over. I hope you're coming to the end now.
I am, Mr Speaker, and I apologise. As Mark Nowak has said, the outcome here should not be one of further division. In that spirit and in Henry's memory, we must work together to ensure this kind of tragedy is not allowed to happen again.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, let me say I welcome the contribution from the Liberal Democrat spokesman and associate myself with his words again in relation to the family and their reaction to what has happened. I'm not sure there was a specific question in there for me, but if there are other things that the member wishes to pick up with me, then I'll be very happy to engage with him on other points of detail that maybe he wasn't able to come on to. Let me just reiterate for the benefit of the whole House, Mr Speaker, anyone using this tragedy, this horrific, vile act of murder in order to stoke further division in our country should be rejected by everyone across this House. Political grandstanding and further division is not what is needed. Clear-eyed action and a commitment to ensuring all of our citizens are equal before the law of our collective land is what is needed.
Live effort.
Mr Speaker, this is a terrible incident, and my heart goes out to the family of Henry. But is my right honourable friend concerned, as I am, that some have raised the issue of the Macpherson inquiry and that this has caused the police to hold back when dealing with people who perpetrate crimes who may be from an ethnic minority. Does she agree with me that there is nothing in the Macpherson inquiry that suggests the police should behave in that way, or excuses the extraordinary behaviour of the police at the scene of this crime? And does she think that what needs reviewing here is the way that police are trained in dealing with incidents of this sort? Because it seems to me that there was that what happened at the scene of that crime falls way below what we expect of the police.
Well, I thank my honourable friend. Let me say, look, police officers must apply the law fairly, without fear or favour, to every single person that they serve. They do work incredibly hard and they do get it right the vast majority of the time, and where mistakes are made, it is right that they are properly investigated and examined. I do think the whole House should remember that our police officers every day run towards danger in order to keep our communities safe. He will know on the specifics of this case because of the ongoing independent IOPC investigation. I don't think it's appropriate to comment further on the specifics of this case.
Father of the House, Sir Edward Lee.
I agree with everything the Home Secretary says, and I agree that we shouldn't weaponise this issue, but nor should we tiptoe around it. The truth is that many white people in this country feel that the police are so terrified of being called racist that either they underreact in the case of the appalling grooming scandal, or they overreact in this case. So there is a role for the Home Secretary now. She needs to really summon in these top police officers and say things have got to change. We are all equal. Don't be terrified of what people think about you. Just carry out the law as you're supposed to do as police officers.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have made very clear from this dispatch box and over the course of my tenure as Home Secretary to say all are equal before the law, and the police must always act without fear and without favour towards any one group. I don't think it's helpful for us to start pitting either majority or different minority communities against one another. That is not what this moment requires. And it is important, he's right, there's always a balance to be struck. There mustn't be underreaction or indeed overreaction. It is always a balance, and I do believe that the police in the vast majority of cases do get that balance right, and as I say, our police officers every single day run towards danger in order to keep us safe. I will always scrutinise all these actions to make sure that our police service is functioning as it should be, so that every single citizen in our country, regardless of the colour of their skin or the faith that they have or may not have, can be absolutely certain that they will always be treated equally, and that whatever complaint they have will always be investigated in the way that we would all expect.
Amanjeet Singh Desi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I am deeply saddened by the murder of Henry Nowak, and my heartfelt condolences to his family, whose pain was made all the worse by the police wrongly handcuffing Henry, believing the lies of the violent murderer. And that stripped Henry of his dignity in his agonising final moments, something which should never happen again. But also, Mr. Speaker, what's very galling is that the likes of Reform, Restore and the far right decided to politicise people's pain, attacking the Sikh community for wearing the kirpan and wanting it banned, even though the kirpan was not used in this violent attack. And they've decided to scapegoat and throw under the bus an entire community based on the actions of one violent murderer. And let me also give them a history.
You're meant to be going through the chair, not across the chamber.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. And let it not be said that we see them and we will stand up to them. And we let me also give a short history lesson, Mr. Speaker.
Order, order. I started this session by tolerance and respect, and I don't expect to be pointing at each other and attacking each other. You work through the chair. We want an orderly chamber that is respectful. This does nobody any good. I think...
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, because hundreds of thousands of Sikh soldiers bravely fought alongside British soldiers during both World Wars. Tens of thousands made the ultimate sacrifice, proudly wearing their turban and their kirpan. So what reassurances can my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, give to the Sikh community, which is both horrified and ashamed at this brutal murder, and they are fearful of their right to freely and peacefully practice their faith?
Well, let me reiterate for my honourable friend, religious freedom is a very important principle that this government respects, that has been respected by different governments of different party political persuasions, and I'm sure that that will continue to be the case. As I said in my statement, we are not a country that collectively punishes an entire group of people for the actions of individuals. The responsibility for this murder rests with the murderer, and he has now faced justice and been sentenced, and that is the right way for these matters to proceed. Let me also say something, Mr. Speaker, on the tone of this debate. I think it would be right for the whole House to remember, I'm sure Henry Nowak's family and his friends are watching, and the way we conduct ourselves in this place can of course be passionate, but must not result in name-calling and also in just shouting different political views here, because I don't think we should all stand for a politicisation of this murder. There are lessons to be learnt, and I'm sure further issues to be drawn from what has happened once the IOPC has concluded its investigation. I'm sure we will debate them here in the future as well, but the way that we conduct that debate matters just as much, in my view, as what is said.
Lewis Cocking.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an appalling and sickening tragedy. Words cannot express my heartbreak for Henry's family and fury at the system that has led to this. We have all seen the body-worn video, and in a previous role, as part of my job, it was my job to review that footage and give an independent judgment. In this case, it is clear to everyone that the police did not use appropriate and proportionate action. There are many good police officers who work hard to keep us safe. But on that night, those police officers displayed no concern for Henry. Immediate actions should have been taken to try and save his life. But instead, Henry was put in handcuffs and mocked as he lay dying. Those police officers have serious questions to answer. Can the Home Secretary explain what action the government will now take to ensure that every officer involved is held accountable for the decisions that they have made, and so that the public can have confidence that we'll all be treated equally under the law?
Well, let me give the honourable gentleman that assurance by referring to the fact that the IOPC is investigating this matter, and they will be free to conclude that investigation using all of the powers that they have and also all of their evidence-gathering abilities. He will know, having reviewed such footage in the past, of course, what is publicly available is 3 minutes of a much longer incident, but the IOPC will be able to review every bit of body cam footage, all of it in its totality, as well as other evidence that sheds light on the context of the incident and also what the police officers saw and how they reacted to it. The IOPC is free to make recommendations not just on specific conduct but also on wider lessons that should be drawn. Let me reassure him, once the IOPC has reported and made its findings, I will make sure that I personally update the House.
Jen Craft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to pay tribute to my constituent Henry Nowak, a bright young man at the start of a life that held so much promise. The turnout at his funeral and the outpouring of community support show that he had an impact well beyond his young years. I'd like to pay tribute to his family, Mark Nowak particularly, his father. Many here have quoted his words, calling that Henry's death does not lead to more division and hatred. His sister Olivia made space in the early days of her own grief to support Henry's friends. I think that speaks to this family and their courage and their bravery and their dignity in dealing with one of the most tragic and devastating things that any of us could ever imagine going through. Like many in this house, I've watched the body-worn video camera footage that was released last night, and I watched it with horror. I cannot imagine what Henry's family felt seeing that and knowing that that was their son's last moments. They expected help from the police, but when Henry lay dying, what he got was accusation and he was disbelieved. This can never happen again. I would like to ask the Home Secretary what she will do to meet Henry's family's calls. First of all, to tackle the national emergency that is knife crime. Like many families who have suffered a loss from this appalling crime, Henry's family have called that his death has not been in vain, that lessons are learnt, and that they can go forward to see that his legacy is that no one else has to suffer that grief. And secondly, I would welcome the Home Secretary's assurances that the IOPC investigation will be thorough, will be fully resourced, that no stone will be left unturned, that the family will have the answers they need and deserve. They will know why their son was treated as a criminal and why the criminal was treated with much more dignity than their son was. And I would be grateful if she would speak to make sure that the family's needs, their wishes, and that their voices are heard throughout this inquiry.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Speaker, let me first pay tribute to my honourable friend for her powerful contribution as Henry's constituency member of Parliament. Let me firstly give her absolutely the assurance that she seeks in relation to the IOPC investigation. I know that investigation is continuing at pace. I know that the family is being engaged with. If there are any concerns about that process, I do invite her to let me know immediately, and I will personally ensure that any concerns are dealt with and that the family can have confidence in the IOPC process. Let me say also on knife crime, this government has acknowledged the absolute epidemic of knife crime in our country and the imperative that we have to act upon it. It's why we have our landmark commitment to halve knife crime over a decade, why we have launched the Knife Crime Action Plan. It is a resourced package of measures designed to deal with the scourge of knife crime. And let me give her this reassurance, and exactly as I said in my statement earlier, we will leave no stone unturned to deal with knife crime in our country, and we do so in the name of all victims of knife crime, including Henry. Their lives must not be in vain, and we must learn the lessons that prevent these tragedies from occurring in the future.
Robert Jenrick.
When Henry lay on the floor, he warned that he had been stabbed 4 times. He said that he couldn't breathe 9 times, and yet the officer chose to cuff him rather than treat him. That officer should be in court being prosecuted for a total dereliction of duty. But the bigger question is this: why do officers behave in this way? Is it because they have been taught repeatedly to elevate perceptions of ethnic minority communities over the safety of white British people? That sickness contributed to the killings of Rudakabana, of Kalakone in Nottingham, and now to Digwa, is a sickness rooted in the anti-racism agenda. Will the Home Secretary root it out? Will she return to equality before the law for all? And will she say that when it comes to public safety, white lives matter just as much as anyone else's?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me say to the honourable gentleman, I don't think this is a moment to pit white Britons against non-white Britons. This is a moment to reflect on a horrific tragedy. He knows full well that the IOPC is investigating the conduct of those police officers. It would be wholly inappropriate for a member of this House to seek to preempt an independent investigation into the potential misconduct of police officers. That IOPC investigation will look at individual conduct, but also what other wider lessons can be learnt from this case. I will personally ensure that all lessons are learned and indeed acted upon. And let me also say it is a fundamental principle, not just of the British criminal justice system, but who and what we are as a country, that we are all equal before the law of our land. That applies regardless of the colour of your skin. That applies whether you're a non-white Brit whose family arrived here 50 years ago or 10 years ago, or if you're a white Brit whose family have been here for about 300 years or more. We are all equal before the law of our land, and we should all support that principle, but not use it so as to pit our citizens against one another. That is not what this moment demands.
Florence Session-Lerby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Home Secretary for coming to the Chamber this afternoon. And as many honourable and right honourable members have said, no one can be moved after watching that footage and just seeing a young life being wasted like that. But I think just the inhumane and degrading treatment that Henry had to go through in his last few moments is something that will stay with the family, something that will stay with the family when the news coverage has moved on, something that will stay with the family after those police officers are being prosecuted, because when someone is killed by a murderer who is intent on killing, regardless of your race, it is the families and the communities that have to deal with the long-term impact. Many of us in this chamber have had to comfort constituents who've lost a family member through knife crime. And this epidemic across the UK has to come to a stop. How is it possible that this killer was allowed to roam the streets with a 21-centimetre knife and freely stab someone and then lie? It is really important that we do make sure that this government gets to grips with that. So I want to ask the Home Secretary, as soon as the IOPC conclude and find the findings of this investigation, will she come back to this House and make sure that the government adequately responds so that we are not back here again having to answer and try to console another family whose life has been taken by knife crime?
Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend. Let me give her that reassurance. I think it is right, whilst the IOPC investigation is taking place, that we give that the space it needs to do its important work, and it would be wholly wrong for ministers to try to preempt what findings might be made in the future. But as soon as those findings are made, I will ensure the government responds.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And can I welcome the Home Secretary's statement this afternoon and just say that I think we all in this House need to be careful at our response to what is a sad loss of life of a young man who was going to a vibrant university in a fantastic and welcoming city with the rest of his life supposedly ahead of him. Notwithstanding what the Home Secretary has said, and I'm grateful for her saying that the IOPC will receive full resourcing, has she done any thinking as to what other investigations her department might need to do into the conduct of Hampshire Constabulary? Can she confirm whether the officers in question have been suspended pending the investigation? And also, could she outline whether she's currently looking at whether she needs to make changes to the exemptions to carrying knives for religious or cultural purposes?
Secretary.
I thank the honourable member for his contribution and his questions. Let me say to him on the question of suspensions, that is a matter for the IOPC because of the way that they make their initial findings and then obviously react to the evidence as it all becomes available. And of course, now that the criminal proceedings have concluded, they will be able to ramp up and go faster on that process. So again, it wouldn't be appropriate for ministers to be either cited on that or seek to direct it in any way, but I know that staff at the IOPC are watching, and to the extent that there are clarifications or questions that need answering, I'm sure that they will respond, but they are wholly independent of government. Let me say to him on the exemptions for the carrying of knives for the purposes of religious ceremonial purposes. This has been a long-standing part of our arrangements as a way of balancing public safety alongside religious freedom. It has been supported by successive governments, including this one. So we are not seeking to move away from our respect for religious freedom. The wider sort of context is an important question. It is always worth serious consideration. But for myself, I think my approach here will be to engage directly with representatives from the Sikh community and also knife crime campaigners. I think these are issues of a common cause rather than pitting those two groups against one another. But I would just repeat the point I made in my statement. There is a world of difference between a person acting out of religious observance, carrying something as an act of faith, and somebody unsheathing that weapon and using it to kill somebody, and that individual has met the full force of the law.
Jonathan Hinder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, there is no bigger champion for policing in this House than me. But the body-worn footage of Henry Nowak's death is gut-wrenching. And the police response is, on the basis of what we know so far, unfathomable. So it's right that the IOPC is investigating, but very often these investigations, as everyone around policing knows, have taken far, far too long, sometimes many years, which is not good for anybody involved. So can the Home Secretary assure me that she will press the IOPC to report as quickly as possible, most of all for Henry's family?
Home Secretary.
My honourable friend speaks powerfully from deep personal, professional experience, which I pay tribute to. Let me assure him that I, as a constituency member of Parliament, have had many concerns about the length of time it takes the IOPC sometimes to report, concerns that I've raised with them directly since I've been Home Secretary. On this occasion and in relation to this case, however, I do think, given that the investigation started in December, the criminal investigation and case has only just concluded in relation to the murderer, and given that the IOPC have said they expect to report within 3 months, I do believe that this investigation is proceeding at the pace that this House would expect. And I'm sure the IOPC are reflecting on the tenor of the debate today and will understand the need for urgency and to make sure the family have answers as quickly as is humanly possible.
Ms Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My thoughts are with Henry Nowak's family, friends and the local community. The prosecution said the perpetrator had a weapons obsession. It should not have been so easy for somebody with a weapons obsession to amass an arsenal of knives. What is the Minister doing to reduce the availability of dangerous knives on our streets?
Home Secretary.
The Honourable Lady makes a really important point. She will know that we have legislated. The Crime and Policing Act became law just a few short weeks ago. The measures within that Act will be implemented at pace by this government, but they relate to the possession of weapons, the buying of weapons, whether online or elsewhere, new duties on sellers of knives to report larger sales or bulk sales of knives. The government has taken a broad range of measures in order to deal with the scourge of knife crime in our country. Those measures have just become law. We will ensure that the law is implemented as quickly as possible so that we can get on top of this issue.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. The death of Henry Nowak is a horrifying tragedy, and my thoughts are with his family, friends and community. As a House, we must honour the words of his father not to use this tragedy to create further hatred or division or tension, and the House should not go against those wishes. They want action so no other family goes through what they are going through right now. Will my right honourable friend guarantee that she will go further and faster to tackle knife crime so no one fears walking the streets of the UK?
Home Secretary. Let me say simply to my honourable friend, she makes a powerful point, and yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Please can the Home Secretary ensure that the IOPC report or the findings from the report are shared with Police Scotland and in fact with all police forces across these islands in order to ensure that any recommended structural or procedural changes and lessons can be learned by all forces and then can be implemented?
Home Secretary. The Honourable Lady makes a very good point, and let me say to her that although of course some of these responsibilities are devolved, I do hope that other legislators in our country will show interest here, and certainly myself and my ministers do engage with our partners in devolved administrations, and we will continue to do so and discuss this matter as well.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I also want to thank the Home Secretary for her statement. Madam Deputy Speaker, as an Amritdhari Sikh, I wear the 5Ks every day, part of my religious observance, including the Qurban. And as a Sikh, I really struggle to express the feelings of sheer horror that this case has generated within me, my family and my friends. It's absolutely, it has been horror. The senseless murder of Henry Nowak should be condemned in its entirety by everybody. And a young man's life has been taken in his prime, and I wish to express mine and my constituency full sympathy and condolences for the family of Henry Nowak, who have shown incredible dignity in their grief. Madam Deputy Speaker, I totally condemn the action of Vickrum Digwa, the mindless, the senseless murder, the lies, and there is simply no religious justification for his actions. And I'm relieved that our criminal justice system and the courts came to the same conclusion. and that is a sentiment that is shared universally across the Sikh community. Madam Deputy Speaker, this case has raised many aspects of concern to my constituents, Sikh and non-Sikh. These include issues of safety, knife crime, and issues of freedom to practice one's faith. So will the Secretary of State meet with me and colleagues to discuss these issues further?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his contribution, and let me again emphasise the dignity and the grace shown by Henry's family. Their response has been something I don't believe I would have been capable of if I had been in their shoes, and it is an example to us all. Let me say to him, on the broader issues, there will be many issues in relation to this case. Once the IOPC investigation is concluded, we'll be able to draw further conclusions as to the facts, the police response, and wider problems as well. Always happy to discuss with him the different nature of the issues raised in this case, and in particular on how we get the right balance between the religious freedoms that he and I both enjoy as members of faith minorities in our country, and also the need to make sure that public protection is never compromised.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Henry Nowak's tragic murder was sadly stark proof that we have become a country where we no longer treat everyone as equal under the law. Does the Home Secretary agree it is time to put a stop to the political correctness that has overpowered common sense policing? And will she commit to and end the nonsense of police cultural competency training being put ahead of protecting every citizen regardless of race?
Let me reiterate my belief and expectation that the police must always act without fear or favour and treat all citizens equally before the law. I hope she will recognise that the vast majority of our police officers run towards danger every day to keep us all safe, and in the vast majority of cases they get the absolute balance right between how they respond to a specific case and also more broadly how they keep communities safe. Where there are issues, lessons must be learned, and I'm sure once the IOPC investigation is concluded, we will do so.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think for all of us as MPs, the time we spend with families who lose a family member in horrific circumstances stays with us throughout our career. And I know in my community there'll be many parents who sadly lost children to knife crime who will have seen Mark Nowak's statement and felt every single word and want to send their condolences to the family. They will also be acutely aware of how a difficult watch that body camera footage was, and his words about not seeing the tragedy used to inflame division. Given that, and given how some people are interpreting this matter and the misinformation that is circulating, I wonder what thought the Home Secretary has given to how we can have trusted sources of information about this issue, because there is an important need for scrutiny and transparency about what has happened, and in that context where there is so much misinformation, we need sources of light, not heat. What more could the Home Office do on that matter, please?
Home Secretary. Well, let me say to my honourable friend, we in the Home Office have a responsibility that we seek always to fulfil, to make sure that we act calmly and responsibly with the full facts at our disposal. And if we do not have the full facts at our disposal, we wait until we do before we comment, so as not to put out misleading or false information. The wider environment, she is right, is very challenging. And of course, the government is taking action by other government departments in relation to Online Safety Act and other digital platforms. I'm sure those are conversations we will return to, because there is no doubt on social media in particular, the environment is very challenging for making sure that the truth is able to be established rather than misinformation and straight up lies as well. I think we have a responsibility also in this House collectively to make sure that we are the ones that shine light rather than heat on these matters, so that we can hold our country together and make sure that all of our citizens are treated fairly.
Sammy Wilson.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and our sympathies go out to the family who must have been horrified by what they saw on the police footage. How have we reached a stage in this country where when the police go to an incident, they arrest a dying man because they're afraid of being accused of racism by his murderer? And this is something which is affecting police right across the United Kingdom. Only this week in my constituency, in a park on the edge of my constituency, the police were called where a gather of Muslims, men were seen to be carrying weapons, No arrests were made, excuses were made for the carrying of the weapons, and the anger of the community is palpable. Would the Secretary of State make it clear to the police that policing should be based not on fear of racism or direction by chief constables, and it shouldn't be based on the colour of people's skin? Police should carry out their duty impartially, and two-tier policing only diminishes the police, undermines their credibility, and undermines their standing in the community, which is bad for everybody.
Well, let me say to the Honourable Gentleman, there can of course be no suggestion of two-tier policing, and we would never, and no one would ever stand for that. I hope he would acknowledge that the police respond to danger every single day and have to make quick decisions in usually very difficult circumstances, and in the vast majority of cases they do get things right. And I do think it's important that we acknowledge the broader picture in relation to policing. Of course, when things go wrong or if the balance is not struck correctly, that should be investigated, scrutinised, and lessons must always be learned. But I wouldn't want us to be in a position where we just accept that somehow there are, big problems here in relation to how our police, generally speaking, approach their job. I do agree that any instances where it looks like something has gone wrong do cost public confidence within policing, but that is why we have the independent arrangements that we do with the IOPC to investigate fully, to make findings of fact that then the government and others can take action on.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Henry Nowak's murder was a senseless, evil act, a criminal act that Vickrum Digwa bears responsibility for. That he provided false claims to evade responsibility is horrific. The actions of the perpetrator do not represent a whole community, and I know the Sikh community in the UK wholly condemn it. Many of us are deeply distressed about the circumstances of Henry's death and his treatment in the final moments. So how will the Secretary of State ensure that those lessons are learned and that Henry's family are put first and fully considered? And on knife crime, how will we ensure that the root causes are dealt with and that resources are provided to agencies but also communities?
Home Secretary. Well, let me assure her that the Knife Crime Action Plan is funded, and we have put significant money behind violence reduction units and other measures that we know are absolutely imperative in dealing with knife crime in our country. And let me assure her again, as soon as the IOPC investigation is concluded, I will make sure the House is updated.
Sir Julian Lewis. Is it normal police practice to handcuff a person lying helpless on the ground and clearly offering no resistance, and given her admirable and utter rejection of differential treatment of people according to their race, will she undertake to examine and withdraw the policing policy document identified by the Shadow Home Secretary as embodying precisely such differential treatment?
Secretary. Well, let me say to him on policing practice and the specifics of this case, that is precisely what the IOPC is looking at, because they take into account context and what the expectations of police officers are, given the specific contexts of danger that they face. And the IOPC will look into that. Once they've made their findings of fact, I will, of course, return to the House. And let me say again, look, on the issue of differential treatment, he will know, he is a member of long-standing in this House. We've had many debates where, from the opposite end of the race spectrum, if I might put it like that, today we are talking primarily about the white community in this instance, but there have been many debates in this House about differential treatment for minority communities as well. It's why I say I don't think it's helpful for us to look at this through a community-specific lens. It is much broader than that. I will, of course, make sure that I always engage with the police on the specifics of their policies, but it is not my view that the police are institutionally or systemically operating a system of differential treatment, and we will always make sure that we guard against that, and I will work with the police to make sure that never happens.
Toby Perkins.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Home Secretary's fierce rejection of two-tier policing or any suggestion that people should be judged differently according to their colour. The footage that we saw was one of the most sickening things that I've ever seen, and my heart goes out to the Nowak family who
had to witness that. She's absolutely right to say that we must wait for the IOPC investigation, but if it does turn out that some kind of misguided application of the culture of policing has led to the victim being not believed while the murderer was believed, what more will she be able to do to make sure that every single police officer hears loud and clear her message that everyone deserves to be policed regardless of the colour of their skin in exactly the same way?
Secretary.
Well, let me give my honourable friend that assurance that as soon as the IOPC investigation has concluded and they have made their findings in relation to the specific circumstances of this case, I will make sure we return to this House so that we have an opportunity to debate collectively what the correct response will be. But let me just reassure him and everybody else, I will never stand for a system where there is any suggestion of differential treatment before the law. We are all equal before the law, and every lesson that we learn must always live up to that abiding principle.
Swear the Reverend.
Deputy Speaker. Henry Nowak was murdered near my constituency of Fareham and Waterlooville, and local people are rightly furious with Hampshire Police, those officers who attended the scene, but also those leading the force. It's important to remember that Henry's murderer accused him of racism, and in honour of Henry's legacy, it's important that we're all abundantly clear. The judge found absolutely zero evidence to back up that claim. Does the Home Secretary agree that a false accusation of racism against a white person is just as bad, if not worse, than a legitimate claim of racism because of the deceit? Does she also agree that watching that body cam footage, it is clear that police officers treated Henry with disdain and contempt and arguably negligence because of the colour of his skin? We are hearing Number 10 say that two-tier policing does not exist. Home Secretary, where is the leadership today? British people are furious. The leadership is not coming from the government.
Home Secretary.
Well, let me say I disagree with her entirely. I think that good leadership in these circumstances, actually great leadership has already been shown by the family of Henry Nowak in the tenor of their response and their statement and their desire, rightly in my view, to not see this murder be used as a tool of furthering division in our country. And I think we could all do well to take our lead from Henry's family. But let me also say to her, I am in the House today, I am answering questions. I've undertaken to come back once the IOPC investigation has concluded. She is a former Home Secretary. She will know these independent arrangements exist so that people can have confidence in the findings that are made in cases such as this, and to know that they are done without political interference or for political ends. Let me say to her on the broader question, point that she made at the start of her contribution on false allegations, lies are lies and they must be called out as such, and where a lie is criminal or leads to criminality, it must face the full force of the law. That is what has happened in this case. There has been a measure of justice because the criminal case has concluded and the murderer has been found guilty of murder, and the judge has made further findings in relation to the circumstances of this case. And again, I would urge her and some of her colleagues, when commenting on this case, they stick to the facts as they have been established.
Jazz Athwal.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Home Secretary and the Shadow Home Secretary for the way they introduced this very sensitive issue. The murder of Henry Nowak was a wicked act of brutality. His family and all those who loved him have been left with an unimaginable grief, mourning their brother, their son, and their friend, who they'll never, ever get back. I know members across the House share my devastation at this vile murder by this vile individual. However, some members have been using the horrific incident as political capital, spreading disinformation for their own gain. Does the Home Secretary agree that politicians have a responsibility to act with decorum, to focus on Henry, who lost his life, and his grieving family, who've lost a son, a brother, rather than fan the flames of division?
Secretary.
I agree with my honourable friend, and I do believe on this matter we should take our lead from Henry's family, who I think have set an example for us all to follow.
Dr. Luke Evans.
I've been stabbed
versus he racially abused me. How's the government going to rebuild public confidence in our culture and institutions that are tempted to rank people by their perceived oppression rather than judging each person on their own actions and the reality?
Very good.
Secretary. Well, look, let me just repeat to the honourable gentleman the point I've already made in this debate. There can be no suggestion of two-tier policing in our country. In the vast majority of cases, the police apply the law fairly and without fear or favour, and they must always do so. Once the IOPC investigation has concluded, I will make sure that the specific lessons from the circumstances of this case are learned and acted upon.
Bailey.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this crime was a vile act and a crime of the utmost severity, and I'm pleased that it's been treated as such by our courts. This is a case about the murder of a young man, and our thoughts should remain with Henry Nowak's family. We do not know why the officers acted as they did, but there is nothing in the Macpherson inquiry that can be blamed upon the apparent lack of humanity displayed in the body-worn camera footage. Does the Home Secretary agree with me that we should reflect upon the words of Henry's father, Mark Nowak, who asked that his son's death should not be used to create further division, hatred or tension? And does she agree that this is entirely what the interventions of the member of Clacton and others seek to do?
Home Secretary. Look, I thank my honourable friend for his contribution. Let me say I do agree with him. He's right to refer to the words of Henry's father. Many members have referred to those words rightly today, and it is something that we should all bear in mind. Let me just reiterate again, I will ensure that all of the lessons that must be learned from this case are learned and are acted upon properly, but this case turns on its own facts and its own circumstances and is not to be used, in my view, to unwind other changes that were made in order to rebuild public confidence in policing.
Thomas.
Madam Deputy Speaker, this cowardly murder is not a reflection upon the Sikh community, which has integrated itself with honour and modesty into the UK. I understand that the weapon wielded was not that traditionally carried by Sikhs. I however believe that this murder may give reasonable grounds to review existing exemptions to knife legislation on the grounds of religious reasons and national dress. I know that the Home Secretary wants to halve knife crime within the next 10 years. What message do these exemptions give? Is she honestly going to rule out at least a review?
Home Secretary.
Well, let me just say to the honourable gentleman, as I've said earlier in this debate, our religious freedoms and the arrangements we have are long-standing and have been designed to strike the right balance between religious freedom and public protection. I have said earlier in this debate that the wider question is something that is worthy of serious consideration, which is what I will give to it. But I would want to start that process by discussing with the Sikh community themselves, to knife crime campaigners and also the police about this matter. That I think is the right way to proceed rather than launching a formal review, because actually, as the judge found in this case, this was not an act of religious observance. The minute that knife was unsheathed to be used, it became a murder weapon, and the murderer has now faced the full force of the law.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My thoughts are with the family and friends of Henry Nowak. It was absolutely gut-wrenching to see the video footage of the body-worn camera. In Hampshire, this murder has left people deeply shocked, not only by the violence of the act, but by the circumstances as he lay dying. I'm pleased to hear that the IOPC will have the resources they need to fully investigate, and I'm also glad to hear that the Hampshire Police and Crime Commissioner has said that she will ensure that those recommendations are fully implemented. Mistakes have clearly been made, but will the Home Secretary ensure that Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary receive any support needed to implement the IOPC findings in full, and that lessons on victim recognition, officer judgment and impartiality are acted on swiftly?
Home Secretary.
Yes, I can give my honourable friend that assurance, and in fact the Policing Minister met with the Police and Crime Commissioner earlier on today.
Shaukat Adam.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we do not want Henry's murder to be used to create further hatred, division or tension. Those are the words of a heartbroken father, and I pray we all heed them in this House. This is a heinous crime made all the worse by the shocking police response, and there must be lessons. So can I ask the Home Secretary what she is going to do differently to crack down on the epidemic of knife crime, possibly a dedicated knife crime minister, and what steps will she take to ensure that our Sikh community, overwhelmingly peaceful and overwhelmingly integrated, are not held collectively responsible by those that wish to divide us?
Home Secretary.
Let me just say to him on knife crime, the government has a landmark commitment to halve the levels of knife crime in this country over the next decade. We have our landmark knife crime action plan. It is a funded action plan. The Prime Minister has taken a personal interest in that commitment, and this government will strain every sinew to deliver on that.
Graham's Trigger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the 80s and 90s in this country, many police officers carried out their duties in a prejudicial and racist way. And I'm proud, together with many others, of having worked to eliminate that racism as much as we could. We're now left with maybe a more difficult problem to deal with. Many police officers and other public servants are now frightened that they will be accused of racism in carrying out those duties. What action does the Home Secretary think she can take and the Cabinet can take to reassure people who are accused of racism that proper process will affect them and it won't just leave them out of a job forever?
Home Secretary.
Well, let me say firstly that my honourable friend is right to remind the House of the historic context in relation to policing in this country and on the question of racism itself. And many minority communities have been on the receiving end of that treatment in the past. It is right that the system as a whole has sought to learn those lessons and to deliver a policing service that we can all be confident in and to know that we are all treated fairly under the law. That is what I will ensure continues to be the case going forward. I would say to him on the question of accusations, when accusations are made, whether in a legal and policing context or indeed throughout other parts of the public sector, they are just that, they are accusations, and we should remember the principles of our broader justice system when it comes to innocence and findings of guilt and the fairness of procedures to give people a chance to explain themselves without findings of fact being made against them before that has happened. I would expect to see that happen throughout the criminal justice system, but also throughout wider society as well.
Jim Alistair.
Thank you. When the race card was played by his murderer, was Henry Nowak treated differently because of the colour of his skin, causing the innocent victim to be handcuffed and the murderer pandered to?
Well, the reaction of the police officers who attended the scene to the circumstances that they faced is what the IOPC is investigating. Once that investigation is complete and findings of fact are made, I'll be happy to discuss the further lessons with him and others in this House.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I join colleagues across the House offering my thoughts and prayers to Henry's family for his vile and disgusting murder. Unfortunately, we're seeing those far-right groups in Blackpool and across the country using Henry's death and weaponising it to create more hatred. So can the Home Secretary join me in condemning those in Blackpool and across the country and make sure that we honour the powerful call from his family who don't want it to be used for further division, hatred or tension in this country?
Well, let me join with my honourable friend and members across this House in condemning the actions of the far right utterly. They are completely unacceptable, and we should all take a stand against them. Weaponising this horrifying murder, this terrible tragedy for the Nowak family in order to spread further division is not what this moment requires, and I hope that that can have broad support from across the House.
Carla Lockhart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My thoughts are with Henry's family. As I listened to his dad yesterday, I couldn't help but cry myself at the loss that they have suffered and the fact that that video footage is etched on their mind forever. Madam Deputy Speaker, it appears in the UK we have an undercurrent of anti-white racism brewing. We see white people jailed for allegedly inciting racial hatred on social media, but members of other communities not even prosecuted for viciously attacking police officers. Henry Nowak deserved better. He did not deserve to be attacked. He did not deserve to spend his final moments pleading for help and saying he could not breathe. He did not deserve not to be believed. Above all, he did not deserve to die. Why did it take this government until yesterday to speak out on this matter whilst running to virtue signal on many other cases? Is the UK no longer a safe place for people like Henry Nowak?
Home Secretary.
Look, I do say to the Honourable Lady, the reason the government hasn't commented until yesterday is because there was a criminal case that was going through our courts. Members of this House, and certainly members of the government, are not commentators for the purposes of social media. They are ministers of the Crown, and they must respect the independence of our criminal justice system and the ability of our courts and our independent legal processes to function, so that when findings of fact are made, a conviction happens and a sentence is passed, it commands public confidence across the whole country, because everyone knows it has not been interfered with politically. It is an independent assessment of the facts of a case. And I would remind her and all members that that is the responsibility we all have, and I would urge her to reflect on that.
Tom Rutland.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for her statement, and can I offer my condolences to Henry Nowak's family who've been through an appalling ordeal. What assurances can my right honourable friend provide that Henry Nowak's family's concerns regarding the initial police response are being fully considered by the relevant authorities, that lessons will be learned from this terrible incident so that no other family has to see their loved one doubted in their final moments by those who should be helping them?
Home Secretary.
Yes, let me give that assurance to him and through him to the family, as I've done so earlier, and in particular in my statement today. They asked a specific question of me when they responded yesterday, and I have met that challenge, and I will ensure we continue to meet that challenge and that they get the answers that they need and that they deserve.
Final question, Tristan Osborne.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Home Secretary for coming to the House today? And can I also extend the sympathies on behalf of my constituents to the family of Henry Nowak in what is a heinous and horrific crime. There is speculation online about the identities of these police officers, and it's also putting other officers at risk across the country due to the irresponsible speculation of extreme right groups and others which are fanning the flames of tension. Yeah. Can the Home Secretary confirm to me what we are doing to protect our officers on a daily basis in regards to this, and also comment on this irresponsible speculation that is being undertaken online?
The speculation online is not just irresponsible, it is wholly unacceptable. And as I said in my statement earlier, we should all take a stand against that. It is putting people who are not connected with this case at risk, but also for the officers that have been connected to this case, there is a proper process that must be allowed to take its course, that will investigate their conduct and make the appropriate findings in the proper way. We should all in this House stand up for the independence of that process, the space for that process to conclude, so that once it has concluded, we can debate thoroughly the lessons that must be learned.
That is the end of... point of order, Jen Croft.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the 21st of May at Business Questions, the Honourable Member for Newark asked a question relating to the murder of my constituent Henry Nowak. At the time, the case against his murderer was still ongoing. The member for Newark gave numerous details of the crime itself, including accusations that had been made by the now convicted murderer. I'm led to believe that matters subject to ongoing criminal cases are considered sub judice, and members should not speak about the details of such cases due to the risk of prejudicing proceedings, and in the worst case scenario could cause a mistrial. Can he imagine the impact that would have had on my constituents to have had to go through the trauma and horror of a trial only to have to go through it again because a politician had been impatient and reckless? I would be grateful for your advice, Madam Deputy Speaker, on how members should conduct themselves when wishing to raise matters that are sub judice, and whether the member for Newark owes an apology to the members of this House who have abided by this convention, respecting the family's right to justice, and who he has repeatedly castigated online, and if indeed he owes an apology to my constituents who themselves have refrained from publicly giving voice to their justified horror at the initial police response until the trial has concluded to make sure that their loved one could receive justice.
I thank the honourable member for giving notice of her point of order and understand that she has indeed informed the member for Newark in advance. The House's sub judice resolution is a significant self-imposed restriction on freedom of speech in this House. Its purpose is to prevent prejudice to individual cases and to preserve comity with the courts. As she notes, the clerks in the table office are always happy to advise members on the sub judice rule and its application to proceedings. It is, however, ultimately the member's responsibility to avoid infringing the sub judice rule and to exercise freedom of speech responsibly. Point of order, Carla Lockhart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and apologies for not giving prior notice, but it's pertaining to the answer that was given to me in the previous session. Could she advise if records can be checked from the front benches as to whether or not this House discussed and debated the murder of the 3 little girls in Southport before the murderer was sentenced, and also in the case of Sir David Amos, because I believe both were brought to this House before the murderer was sentenced.
The honourable member did not give me prior notice of her point of order. First of all, the chair is not responsible for the content of the speeches or the contributions made by back benches, let alone the front benches. I do not have the information to hand about those 2 particular issues that she's raised, but no doubt the clerk can provide that information in a moment or two whilst they look up that research or that bit of information that she so requires. As the member will know as well, the government is responsible for the statements that they bring forward to the House. Now, if that is the end of the points of order, I'll allow the front benches, if they wish to shuffle over. Everyone else should leave the chamber if they wish to do so very quietly and very quickly.